Hey, so um, so I posted on Facebook a bit. Somebody posted a thing the other day related to car seats and the way to be safe in a car seat, or how to properly buckle your child in. I'm gonna have some whiskey. And I asked a question related to leverage and whether their post was like real and recommended by National Highway Traffic Safety Commission, or if it was bullshit and just sort of a meme. And then things escalated, and I got called sick for asking a question and giving an analogy of what I meant by that question. So I mentioned it to my wife, told her I was thinking about doing a video, and she was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And then today she sent me a message and said, "Hey, did you make that video?" I'm like, okay, so let's do this video. So here's the idea. I brought my backpack to demonstrate what the image looked like, and I'll steal this little candy cane thing to show you my analogy, which I used a stick, but this will work out. So the video, or not the video, the images showed this. Okay, so I had a child car seat. So pretend this is a child car seat. And it had the chest strap, and the video had the chest strap way up here. Now, for the buckle on a kid's chest strap is really about this wide for those who haven't seen a car seat, and so to me this looks uncomfortable. But the other thing is, it changes the point of leverage for where this conjoining point is. So my question was, would moving this up create a fulcrum and more pressure at the neck, as opposed to distributing that? Like if you bring it down and you have it, so the recommendation is either between the nipples or between the armpits, but the image showed it way up like this, possibly between the arms, versus having it down here, closer to the sternum but still protecting the rib cage. And then of course that don't ever do it for a child, is having it all the way down here by the belly button, because that's your internal organs that are catching the weight. So my question was, here at the bottom of the ribs, seems like it would be as reasonable as here between the nipples or up here. And in fact, when I talk about it from a leverage perspective, it seems like having it somewhat lower allows better mobility and thus better absorption over through the body, and thus less likely for, this is going to be a scary idea, internal decapitation of a child, which is basically the muscles of the neck are not strong enough to hold the spinal cord attached to the head because of the weight of the head. And so the images showed this thing, and then they linked to videos, and the videos in the webpage talked about internal decapitation that happened to their child because of improper use of car seat, and it was actually turning the car seat forward at an age when the child wasn't ready for that to happen. Like basically the muscular development of the child before the age of 2 isn't meant to have a forward-facing car seat because their body can't support that load in an impact crash. So from a physics perspective, or why this matters, I gave the analogy because they sent me the same links again after I asked the question as what they had sent before, and so I don't think they understood the question. So the analogy I gave them is, you take a stick and say this stick pretend the stick is 2 feet, okay? If you grab at the bottom of the stick and the top of the stick and you create flex, you can bend the stick a bit. Like, this isn't bending as much as I had hoped, but you'll notice there's a couple inflection points where it's actually bending. It's distributing the load and the pressure that I'm putting on this stick to bend this, and thus, like, the pressure at any given point is less than if you took and went at the top of the stick and created this leverage point and bent. You're likely to get a strong bend because you've created a fulcrum, or basically the point of pressure that remains constant in your lever, and now you're creating this bend. I actually just broke the plastic or the wrap job on my Skittles right there by creating that fulcrum higher up. And so my question was, if you move that buckle up higher towards the neck, does it create restriction here that creates a fulcrum and thus reduces the distribution of load on the neck, increasing the likelihood of internal decapitation? And so I was told that I was sick for even talking about that. The way to think about this and bring this back to a physical body is by looking at the distribution of or the area of that weight that gets distributed, right? So we move this back to middle point, and I say that middle point will not move, everything above that will move. So I hit an impact, right? When I hit this impact, you'll notice that all of this can move, and all of this is here up, okay? So now I have about 5 or 6 vertebrae plus my neck that is able to move or whip during that impact, right? I am distributing that amount of force and that weight of my head across those 6 vertebrae. Now, the problem is that the weakest point in there is likely to break. The weakest point could still be your head, but you are still distributing over that area. If you bring that up here, and this is now static, then this is the only thing that can move. And when this is the only thing that can move, I now have 2 to 3 vertebrae right here in my neck, which is the only place that I can reduce or slow that load, right? So you can think of this and visualize inertia in a number of ways. If you want a very mechanical view of inertia and transfer of energy, you can take those little knocker balls, and so there's like 5 balls, and you pull this one back, release it, it hits, and it sends almost the exact amount of force and energy all the way through, and this one goes, right? So them being static, there's nothing to really reduce or diffuse that inertia, that energy that's transferring, right? So it's almost a direct transfer. If you have something that's more absorbent, right? So your spring shocks, your airbag in a car, then you're taking that same force and you're distributing it over a bigger area. And thus the pressure at any given point in that area is reduced, right? So airbag, right? The guy's recommendation to me was I go on the freeway, go 60 miles an hour, and just fucking pound my brakes and taste my steering wheel. I have a strong allergy to steering wheels, and eating them is bad, so I decided maybe I shouldn't do that. That's a fucking stupid idea, but it also doesn't prove the point or demonstrate what I'm talking about, both from the dispersion of load across an area, or really like what happens to a child in the back seat in a car seat that's forward facing, and how the strap really plays into that. So I politely said, no, I'm not going to slam on my brakes, but I will create a video to not only demonstrate what I'm talking about in the distribution of that force over an area, but also to discuss sort of that physics piece or what that means. The other thing that cracks me up about the entire scenario is the idea of slamming your brakes at 60 miles an hour. Nothing's going to forward impact on your car, and nothing's going to release that airbag. And the airbag becomes super, super fascinating when you're talking about this. Because what is an airbag doing, and why is it there, right? Think about this from just a logical perspective. You're getting in a crash, right? The airbag is there for when you crash. You're getting in a crash, and so you're traveling anywhere from 15 to 70 miles an hour, right? And when you do that and you impact something, some engineer somewhere was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire a balloon at 200 miles an hour at your fucking face as you're getting in this crash, right? That's the speed of deployment. Like, you can probably look it up, maybe it's a little bit more. It's basically 200 miles per hour that airbag is firing. Why would we fire something at your face at 200 miles an hour? Like, relative velocity now, you're traveling at 70 miles an hour, something's firing at your face at 200 miles an hour. That's now at 270 miles an hour of impact or force, right? But what's it doing? It's taking and creating a large surface area that your momentum and your energy is now striking. And when you strike it, it's diffusing across all the surface area of your face, body, that impacts that airbag and reducing that force before you hit the steering wheel. The steering wheel is very rigid, and it has a small surface area that you're impacting. So instead of taking all that energy and putting it in the 4 inches that you're going to strike your face with on that steering wheel, you're splitting it over a square foot or 2 square feet of area, and thus the amount of force at any given spot is reduced. So the reason you have an airbag is simply to take and diffuse that load over a larger surface area. Take and put that back into the child situation sitting in the back seat with no airbag, related to how you distribute that force across their body, right? Now you're in a 5-point harness, so you've got a buckle going across, and you've got 2 coming down, right? All that joined here, and you have this lever that you're implementing across their body. The higher you bring it, the more you're restricting their movement and the likelihood that they'll fall out of the harness. You can't fall out of the harness because you have a fulcrum right here at your waist. What you're trying to do is limit the amount of movement in your upper body as you reach that impact. So the less that they can fly forward, the less likely that, hey, it'll cut into their internal organs, or their head will hit something in front of them, so on and so forth. So this and this has now not only distributed the load along the seat belt, so that you have a lot more surface area that's capturing that load as you come forward, but it's also taking and restricting more parts of the body so that this isn't becoming your lever. Taking and moving that up is now restricting the amount of movement you have and the absorption you have over a longer surface area, which is your neck, by bringing that higher. So my suggestion would be this sort of area, so that it's still impacting or still capturing the ribs, still bringing those harnesses and keeping those harnesses close so the baby's body can't fly out the top, but also allowing a little bit more freedom of movement for the spinal cord, such that you're not creating all the pressure in the neck, which could lead to internal decapitation. So the idea of me being sick for trying to bring physics into a conversation related to child safety and a safety